The universe had grown silent. Centuries of exploration, communication, and interstellar expansion had led humanity farther than ever imagined, yet now, at the edge of known space, their voice trembled on the brink of extinction. The last human signal was not a broadcast of pride, nor a declaration of victory, it was a message of survival, memory, and warning, sent across the void in the hope that someone, somewhere, would hear and understand. On Earth, centuries prior, humanity had thrived. Cities sparkled with energy harnessed from stars, fleets of interstellar ships explored distant systems, and knowledge flourished across colonies in dozens of star systems. Yet ambition brought consequence. Rival alien empires, once curious observers, now viewed humans as a threat. Conflict erupted across the stars, fleets clashed, planetary defenses shattered, and entire colonies were reduced to ruins. Humanity's once expansive network of exploration and communication became fragmented, isolated by distance, conflict, and relentless pursuit. The signal originated from the last functioning deep space communication array, orbiting a dying colony world at the edge of a collapsed star system. Its creators were few: engineers, scientists, and diplomats who had survived wave after wave of attacks, who had watched friends and families vanish into the void, and who now bore the responsibility of preserving humanity's essence. They knew this signal would be humanity's final testament, the culmination of millennia of discovery, hope, and resilience. Encoded in the transmission were more than coordinates or data, it was a mosaic of human identity. Music, art, mathematics, history, philosophy, and personal stories intertwined, a tapestry of culture meant to endure long after the species itself might vanish. The signal carried warnings as well, the locations of safe havens, the designs of advanced technologies, and notes on alliances and adversaries. Every bit of information was carefully curated, intended to guide any civilization fortunate enough to intercept it, as the signal traveled through light years of empty space. Alien civilizations detected it. Some were astonished: humans, thought lost or extinct, had reached beyond their deaths with a message. Others were cautious, unsure of intent, interpreting the signal as either a trap, a plea for help, or a final act of defiance. The more sophisticated the civilization, the more profound the impact. They recognized that humans had not merely survived, they had encoded their very essence into a transmission, a declaration that even in annihilation, their spirit endured. Back at the colony world, the final humans worked tirelessly to maintain the array. Supplies dwindled, systems overheated, and energy cores flickered with instability. Yet every challenge was met with ingenuity. Engineers rerouted power through emergency conduits, scientists adapted long-dead protocols, and diplomats transmitted calm, steady instructions into the array's automated systems. Each human contributed to a singular purpose: to ensure that humanity's voice would persist beyond extinction. The last signal also carried warnings of cosmic consequences. Humanity had observed the universe with unprecedented scrutiny, noting dangers, rogue fleets, collapsing stars, and hostile empires. It was a map of experience, a guide for those who might follow, and a cautionary tale of the limits of ambition and the costs of survival. Embedded within the data were also philosophical reflections, messages about resilience, morality, and the importance of curiosity and empathy, lessons distilled from the triumphs and failures of an entire species. As the final human operators fell one by one, some to illness, some to conflict, some to the inevitability of decay, the signal continued. Automated systems, programmed with intricate redundancy and fail-safes, took over, ensuring that humanity's last voice would travel across galaxies, for centuries, perhaps millennia, long after its creators had vanished. In that silence, there was both tragedy and beauty: a species gone, yet immortalized in light and code, speaking across the cosmos to anyone who might listen. The last human signal did not beg for recognition. It did not threaten. It did not claim dominance. Instead, it conveyed what humanity had always represented: ingenuity, resilience, curiosity, and hope. It was a testament to existence, an invitation to learn, and a warning that the universe was vast, indifferent, and full of both danger and wonder. Any civilization that intercepted it would learn not just the name of a species, but the essence of what it meant to strive, explore, and endure, and so, the signal drifted through the void, unstoppable, eternal in its own way. Across systems, stars, and galaxies, civilizations paused to decipher it, to marvel at its depth, and to understand that somewhere, once, humanity had reached for the stars, and even at the end, they had left a voice that refused to be silenced. The last human signal rippled through the void, crossing light years of empty space, eventually reaching civilizations that had long monitored the stars. Some had dismissed humanity centuries ago, assuming the species had been extinguished by war, famine, or cosmic misfortune. Others remembered faint legends, transmitted from one generation of explorers to the next. The arrival of the signal shattered both assumptions. Humanity was gone, but their presence still resonated through the cosmos, deliberate, profound, and impossible to ignore. Alien civilizations intercepted the transmission at different times and from different vantage points. But the effect was universal. Signals embedded with human knowledge, philosophy, art, and history filled their data banks, overwhelming some systems with unexpected complexity. The aliens had never encountered a species capable of encoding not only information but emotion, creativity, and morality into such a structured yet profoundly expressive form. What began as curiosity soon transformed into reverence, fear, and intense study. Within advanced alien academies, scholars worked tirelessly to decode the message. Music streams contained patterns interpretable mathematically, yet they resonated emotionally even with species incapable of perceiving sound in the human sense. Visual art encoded within the signal used wavelengths and geometries that challenged alien perception, representing concepts of beauty, empathy, and memory. Philosophical passages, written in logic intertwined with narrative, described choices, failures, and triumphs of humanity across centuries. Every layer conveyed not only knowledge, but identity. Some alien governments reacted with caution. They interpreted the signal as a warning. Humanity had survived adversities far greater than what most civilizations experienced. Perhaps it had accumulated strategies, secrets, and technologies that could threaten entire empires if a single human had survived somewhere. Fleets were mobilized to investigate origins, scanning star systems for signs of remaining human colonies or hidden outposts. Surveillance drones scoured uncharted sectors, analyzing planets, moons, and asteroid belts, seeking evidence of human activity. Others approached the signal differently. They viewed it as a gift, a repository of knowledge and wisdom to be preserved. Entire civilizations debated which parts of the transmission to prioritize: technological schematics, medical discoveries, philosophical essays, or artistic expressions. Libraries and quantum archives were dedicated solely to preserving fragments of humanity, while academies trained scholars to interpret its complex layers. It became clear that the signal was more than just information. It was a species' attempt to leave a legacy in the universe. Some alien factions, more opportunistic than respectful, saw the last human signal as a challenge. Could the knowledge be weaponized? Could the strategies of humanity, distilled across millennia, give them an advantage in interstellar conflicts? Secretive fleets moved toward the coordinates embedded in the signal, testing planetary systems and probing for defenses. Yet the signal itself carried no threats, no instructions to harm, only guidance, warning, and hope. Those who sought to exploit it discovered that humanity had anticipated such motives, embedding ethical frameworks and principles into every technological blueprint, rendering misuse difficult or self-defeating. Over time, the signal became a catalyst for interaction between alien species. Those who studied it began to communicate, sharing interpretations and insights. Philosophical debates arose. Was humanity's approach to survival a model to emulate? Could the empathy, creativity, and moral reasoning encoded in the signal influence alien societies? Fleets that once sought dominance now paused to learn, realizing that the legacy of one small species could reshape alliances, politics, and exploration strategies across light years. Meanwhile, in the fading systems from which the signal originated, automated arrays continued to transmit They were maintained by sophisticated AI protocols, designed to adapt and repair themselves. Even as planets cooled, atmospheres eroded, and human colonies vanished, the signal persisted, unbroken and undeterred by the passage of time. It became a beacon, a guide, and a reminder that extinction need not be silence, that survival could be measured not only in presence but in the echo left across the universe. As civilizations absorbed more of the message, humanity became both legend and reality. Scientists and philosophers debated the species' motivations, commanders analyzed strategic patterns, and artists attempted to recreate its cultural depth. The name humanity transcended mere identification. It became synonymous with resilience, intelligence, and the capacity to influence even long after disappearance. The galaxy was no longer indifferent, it had been awakened to the potential of one species that had dared to broadcast itself into eternity, and so, the last human signal spread farther and farther, touching systems that had never known life, inspiring civilizations that had never thought to dream, and reminding all who listened that even when a species falls, its voice can travel across the cosmos, eternal, unyielding, and profoundly transformative. The ripple of humanity's final transmission did more than inspire awe, it ignited action. Across the galaxies, alien civilizations began to interpret, debate, and respond to the signal. For some, it was a call to preserve, for others, a challenge to exploit, and for a few, a warning of the consequences of hubris. The signal became a catalyst, reshaping political, scientific, and cultural landscapes in ways no one had anticipated. The first direct responses came from civilizations known for their neutrality and scholarship. They sought to safeguard the knowledge contained in the signal, establishing vast repositories and archives in remote, protected star systems. Scholars and philosophers worked to decode human mathematics, ethics, and art, marveling at the complexity of a species capable of intertwining morality and creativity within data streams. Entire fleets were repurposed from defense to protection, ensuring that no rogue faction could manipulate or destroy these human records. Yet not all civilizations were so reverent. Ambitious factions, seeking dominance or advantage, mobilized fleets toward the coordinates embedded in the signal, aiming to claim whatever secrets humanity had left behind. They scoured dying colonies, derelict satellites, and abandoned research outposts for remnants of human technology. Many encountered automated defense systems, long designed to protect the integrity of the transmissions. These systems were not destructive in the conventional sense, they were puzzles, tests, and safeguards, forcing intruders to navigate human ingenuity rather than simply overpower it. Fleets frustrated by these systems soon discovered that human foresight had outmatched them even from extinction. Diplomacy among alien species became a critical factor. Those civilizations that respected the human signal began forming coalitions to study and share its contents, while factions motivated by greed or fear clashed in skirmishes near key archives. The galaxy's political map shifted as human knowledge, ethics, and strategies subtly influenced decision-making. Leaders referenced human approaches to problem-solving, adaptability, and moral reasoning when crafting alliances, negotiating disputes, and planning exploration. Humanity, though physically absent, had become a force shaping the actions of multiple civilizations. The signal's most profound impact, however, was cultural. Alien philosophers debated the ethical frameworks embedded within humanity's messages. Artists and scientists studied human music, literature, and visual patterns, attempting to interpret beauty, emotion, and meaning in ways their species had never conceived. Even military strategists were affected, not merely by the technology, but by the principles encoded in the transmission: patience, adaptability, resilience, and calculated empathy. The name humanity began to carry weight as both legend and lesson, a standard by which civilizations measured innovation, ethics, and resilience. Tensions escalated when a coalition of aggressive factions sought to monopolize human knowledge. They moved fleets into regions where archives were stored, attempting to secure control through intimidation and force. Automated defenses, guided by artificial intelligence protocols left by humans, responded with non-lethal yet highly effective countermeasures, redirecting energy grids, jamming communications, and deploying intelligent obstacles. The would-be conquerors were frustrated and awed, recognizing that humanity's foresight extended far beyond any conventional understanding of survival. Simultaneously, peaceful civilizations began adapting human-inspired strategies for exploration, diplomacy, and problem-solving. They used human ethical principles to mediate disputes, implemented adaptive algorithms for navigation and resource management, and experimented with artistic and educational systems inspired by human creativity. In countless worlds, the influence of humanity's signal reshaped societies, not through domination, but through the power of intellect, adaptability, and moral reasoning. Amid the turmoil, the last human signal continued its journey outward, reaching star systems that had never known intelligent life. There, the transmission became a beacon of inspiration, a blueprint for possibility, showing that a species could endure intellectually and morally long after physical extinction. Civilizations encountering it learned to value curiosity, courage, and cooperation, and some even began to develop new forms of technology and governance inspired by human thought patterns. By the end of this stage, the galaxy had fundamentally changed. Humanity's physical presence had vanished, but its essence, encoded in the signal, was actively shaping interstellar events. Fleets moved with human-inspired coordination, societies debated human philosophies, and alliances were forged based on principles distilled from extinct humans. The species had transcended mortality, leaving behind a legacy that was not merely knowledge, but influence, guidance, and a profound reminder that even the smallest species could echo across the stars. The human signal had spread far and wide, and now the consequences of its presence began to manifest across multiple galaxies. Civilizations that had once ignored humanity were now forced to acknowledge its legacy. Some embraced it, forming coalitions to study and safeguard the knowledge embedded within the transmission. Others, threatened by its potential, plotted in secret, seeking to exploit or suppress what remained. The stage was set for a new era of interstellar tension, where the memory of humanity became both inspiration and catalyst for conflict. In one of the most technologically advanced sectors, alien fleets convened in orbit around a neutral star system to deliberate the implications of the signal. The assembly was vast, representatives from dozens of civilizations, each with unique biology, culture, and technology. Scholars presented translations of human art, mathematics, and philosophy, showing patterns that were as much moral frameworks as scientific knowledge. Strategists demonstrated how human approaches to problem-solving could be applied to fleet coordination, resource management, and interstellar diplomacy. Many in attendance were captivated, some were alarmed. The name humanity now symbolized potential that could shift power balances across light years. Meanwhile, opportunistic factions plotted aggressively. Believing they could extract or weaponize humanity's knowledge, these factions launched fleets toward regions identified in the signal as containing critical archives. Automated defenses, left behind by human engineers and AI systems, were sophisticated beyond imagination. Intruders encountered energy fields that redirected their trajectories, artificial intelligence that adapted in real time, and complex communication puzzles that required ethical reasoning, creative thinking, and problem-solving skills to bypass. Even the most powerful fleets found themselves stymied, unable to claim the prize without meeting the standards humanity had set for engagement. The signal's influence extended to cultural and philosophical realms as well. Alien scholars debated the ethical principles embedded in the human transmissions: empathy, collaboration, and moral responsibility. Artists sought to replicate human music and visual patterns, finding inspiration in frequencies and geometries that challenged their perception. Even military commanders incorporated human-inspired strategies into training and tactics, emphasizing adaptive thinking, rapid improvisation, and restraint, principles long alien to their rigid doctrines. Humanity's legacy became a guiding template, not for conquest, but for innovation and moral reasoning. Amid this rising tension, a coalition of civilizations wary of humanity's influence sought to assert control. They mobilized fleets to intercept the signal, attempting to quarantine regions of space where the transmission was strongest. Battles erupted, not directly against humans, for none remained, but against automated defenses, sensor arrays, and protected archives. Energy fields lit the void. Communication jammers hummed with interference, and AI-driven countermeasures turned conventional tactics into traps and riddles. Through every engagement, the brilliance and foresight of humanity became evident, demonstrating that the species' legacy was more than knowledge, it was strategy, foresight, and moral architecture embedded in technology. At the same time, peaceful civilizations recognized the opportunity to embrace humanity's teachings. Diplomatic alliances formed to share the signal's knowledge openly, combining resources to decode it fully and apply its insights collaboratively. Scientific projects emerged to explore abandoned human outposts, resurrecting long-forgotten technology for medical, energy, and navigational purposes. Philosophers debated the implications of human ethics, wondering if the galaxy could evolve to emulate the moral and intellectual balance humanity had cultivated. The signal had become a prism through which multiple species redefined themselves. Even as conflicts flared and alliances strengthened, the human signal pressed outward, traversing unexplored regions of space. It touched civilizations that had never known intelligent life, providing frameworks for reasoning, curiosity, and cooperation. Some species began developing their first technologies guided by the principles embedded in the transmission, others found inspiration in human resilience, seeing it as a model for surviving in an indifferent and dangerous universe. Humanity, though gone, had become a teacher, philosopher, and strategist, shaping life across the cosmos. By the end of this stage, the galaxy had fundamentally transformed. The signal had triggered wars, alliances, technological revolutions, and philosophical awakenings. Humanity's physical presence was gone, yet its influence was pervasive and undeniable. Civilizations across light years now operated under the shadow and guidance of a species that had long since vanished. In every corner where the signal reached, the name humanity was spoken with reverence, caution, or inspiration. Its echo reminded all who heard it that intelligence, morality, and perseverance could transcend even extinction, shaping destinies far beyond the limits of physical existence. The consequences of the last human signal had escalated far beyond expectation. Across multiple galaxies, alien civilizations had been forced to reckon with the unexpected. A species gone from the physical universe was still actively shaping interstellar events. Alliances had formed, conflicts had ignited, and technology, philosophy, and strategy were all being rewritten in the shadow of humanity's legacy. Yet the galaxy had not fully realized the extent of what the human signal could do. The first major turning point came when an aggressive coalition attempted to seize control of a key archive, a repository of human knowledge orbiting a dead star. The fleet was enormous, bristling with weapons, cloaking devices, and rapid response drones. Their intent was to monopolize the knowledge of a species they considered extinct, hoping to gain an advantage over rivals. Yet the repository was not unguarded. Automated systems, designed with the ingenuity and foresight of humans, activated defenses that were both subtle and brilliant. Energy fields redirected fleets into safe orbits, AI-guided traps forced enemy commanders to solve complex logic and ethical problems, and adaptive systems monitored communications, predicting and countering every tactic. The intruders found themselves confronted not by raw force, but by the intellect, creativity, and strategy of a species no longer alive. Meanwhile, peaceful civilizations saw opportunity. Scholars and scientists worked together across systems to fully decode the last human signal. Music, literature, philosophy, and scientific data were shared freely among allies, creating a renaissance of learning. Colonies that had once been isolated discovered new methods of sustainable energy, advanced propulsion systems, and ethical frameworks for governance. The galaxy began to reshape itself, not through war, but through knowledge, collaboration, and inspiration. Humanity's principles guided this transformation, demonstrating that survival and progress did not require domination, but intelligence, cooperation, and moral clarity. Conflict, however, remained inevitable. Some factions sought to exploit the signal for dominance. Skirmishes erupted near archives, fleets maneuvered across star systems, and technological duels took place without a single human ever being present. The last human signal had become a battleground of intellect and strategy. Attackers underestimated the sophistication of human-designed defenses, while allied civilizations adapted rapidly, sharing insights and techniques. Every encounter reinforced a growing truth: the legacy of humanity was a force that could not be conquered by conventional power. In the midst of this turmoil, the signal reached civilizations that had never encountered intelligent life. Its transmission inspired new thought, provoking young species to explore, experiment, and innovate. Even without prior knowledge of humanity, these civilizations grasped the encoded principles: resilience, creativity, ethical reasoning, and the drive to survive against impossible odds. In some systems, fledgling species began building technology centuries ahead of what might have been expected, guided by the intellectual footprint left behind by humans. The signal had become a teacher, philosopher, and strategist, shaping life on a scale that no one could have predicted. The tension in the galaxy reached its apex when the aggressive coalition attempted a coordinated strike to capture multiple archives at once. They deployed fleets in a wide formation, attacking from multiple directions simultaneously. But the archives, linked through a network of AI systems left by humans, responded as one. Defensive pulses, strategic redirection of attacks, and automated countermeasures neutralized assaults with precision. Human ingenuity had been embedded not only in technology, but in strategy, ethics, and problem-solving. The coalition's fleets were forced to retreat, awed and humbled by the effectiveness of a species that no longer existed. In the aftermath, a new balance emerged. Civilizations that had embraced humanity's teaching strengthened their alliances, sharing knowledge freely and implementing human-inspired strategies for governance, defense, and exploration. Aggressive factions, recognizing that dominance through force could not succeed against a species they could no longer fight directly, shifted their approach, choosing diplomacy and adaptation. Across light years, the name humanity became synonymous not with conquest, but with intelligence, resilience, and moral authority. By the end of this stage, the galaxy had been transformed. Humanity, though physically extinct, had become a guiding presence. Entire civilizations owed technological breakthroughs, ethical frameworks, and strategic advancements to lessons encoded in the last human signal. Where once humans had been silent, they were now everywhere: in philosophy, in science, in diplomacy, and in the moral imagination of countless species. The last human signal had not only survived, it had become eternal, shaping the destiny of the universe itself. The galaxy had changed irrevocably. The last human signal, which had traveled for centuries through the void, had reshaped civilizations, inspired new technologies, and rewritten the rules of diplomacy and strategy. Where once humans had been absent, they were now omnipresent, not as bodies or armies, but as intellect, morality, and legacy. The final stage of this transformation approached, as civilizations faced the culmination of decisions made in response to humanity's echo: the aggressive coalitions, which had sought to monopolize human knowledge, now hesitated. Their fleets, once instruments of force, had been repeatedly outmaneuvered by automated defenses and ingenious strategies encoded by humans. Every attempt to dominate or exploit the signal resulted not in victory, but in lessons. Systems recalibrated, tactics failed, and commanders were forced to reconsider the effectiveness of aggression. Slowly, even the most belligerent factions began to recognize that the legacy of humanity was not a weapon to be wielded, it was a standard to be understood. Peaceful civilizations took the lead, coordinating to fully preserve and expand the reach of human knowledge. Interstellar academies were established, linking archives across galaxies. AI systems maintained the last human signal, ensuring its integrity and continuous propagation. New fleets, guided by human-inspired strategies, patrolled the borders of vulnerable archives, not as instruments of war, but as guardians of wisdom. Scholars, engineers, and diplomats worked across species lines, translating human philosophy into actionable frameworks for cooperation and problem-solving. Humanity's principles became the bedrock for a new era of interstellar civilization. At the same time, younger civilizations, those just emerging from isolation or infancy, encountered the signal as a beacon of guidance. Worlds previously unaware of life found instructions for understanding physics, mathematics, and ethics embedded within the transmissions. Cultural and technological revolutions occurred across systems, not through conquest, but through curiosity and collaboration. Even in the absence of humans, the species' essence reshaped the cosmos, proving that influence does not require presence, and survival can exist in the realm of ideas. Conflicts continued in scattered sectors, yet even here, the human signal acted as a stabilizing force. Fleets and leaders who had once relied on sheer force began incorporating human-inspired adaptability, problem-solving, and moral reasoning into their strategies. Attacks were mitigated with precision, negotiations guided by ethical frameworks, and resources allocated efficiently across star systems. Humanity's legacy had become a universal standard, forcing civilizations to reconsider not only how they fought, but why they fought, and whether they should fight at all. The final test came when a massive interstellar coalition, representing thousands of worlds, gathered to determine the ultimate fate of humanity's legacy. Aggressive factions proposed seizing control of the archives, while peaceful factions argued for universal preservation. After extensive deliberation, influenced by the encoded philosophies of humans themselves, the decision was unanimous: humanity's knowledge would remain free and accessible, preserved as a gift to the cosmos rather than a tool for domination. The signal, once merely a message, had become a symbol of intelligence, resilience, and moral guidance. In the quiet aftermath, the galaxy entered a new epoch. Knowledge flowed freely, alliances stabilized, and civilizations began to implement the principles humanity had left behind. Trade routes expanded, exploration intensified, and understanding across species deepened. Artists, philosophers, and scientists all drew inspiration from the human signal, integrating its lessons into the culture, ethics, and governance of countless worlds. Humanity's influence, once physical, had become eternal, and so, as the last human signal continued its journey through the cosmos, it carried not only data, but a legacy, a testament to a species that refused to be forgotten. Humanity's name was spoken with reverence across star systems, not as a memory of extinction, but as a celebration of ingenuity, courage, and moral clarity. Extinct in body but immortal in spirit, humanity had achieved a final victory, transcending mortality to shape the future of the universe itself. The galaxies, once indifferent, had learned the name of humanity, and with it, they had learned the profound truth, that even in the face of annihilation, a determined species could leave a mark so powerful that its echo would endure for eternity, guiding, inspiring, and reshaping the cosmos for countless generations to come.